I would like to tell you guys a few things about our distinguished guests. Sharon A. Hill, author, speaker, and MBA, spent more than 20 years as a development and marketing manager at Fortune 500 giant IBM. She is president of Sharon Hill International, her etiquette and motivational speaking company. She speaks at universities and corporations across America and thanks to virtual across the world. Sharon served as the 2010 to 2011 District 37 governor, the 2012 to 2013 regional advisor, and the 2013 and 2015 Toastmasters International Director. She's currently a Region 7 advisor, again, serving districts from Washington, D.C. to Western Pennsylvania. Sharon has earned four DTM awards. Today, Sharon is a member of 5 Toastmasters clubs, the 2020 to 2021 Region 7 North Advisor, and Vice President of Education for 4 clubs. She's married to her husband and soulmate, Elmer Hill, DTM and Technical Advisor, Tech Support, and lives in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Please help me welcome a huge applause for none other than the distinguished Toastmaster, Sharon Hill, appreciating generational differences.
Thank you all. Love you all. Thank you so much for being here today. Let me go over some ground rules before I get started, jumping right into appreciating generational differences. You may notice my background. I seem a little dark in here. That's because the system that I was supposed to be using today, Murphy's Law, decided to break. So now I'm in a little darker room that I didn't really want to be in. I want all of you to make sure you name yourselves, and I'm going to ask you later to rename yourself. So I assume everyone here knows how to name yourself. If there's someone here who does not know how to name, we'll talk to you separately to make sure, because during this presentation, we're going to ask you to rename yourself. Also, as mentioned, this is a totally interactive presentation. That means I'm not going to stand here and talk to you or sit here and talk to you the whole time. In order to have better learning, better retention, I'm going to ask all of you, when I ask for comments, when I ask you to put something in chat, please be prepared to do so. And Iris will be reading to me. I do have my chat up, friends. I do have chat up. But if we get more than fills my screen, go ahead and put something into chat. And Iris will let me know if somebody has a comment, and I will respond to it and ask you to please participate. At this point, I'm going to pull up my screen. Share screen, appreciating differences. There we go. Let me make this, pull this over here to fill it up right here. Oops, let me let this person in. And stand by. All right, I'm assuming everybody can see my screen. Friends, in talking to Iris and talking to Iris's team, we had a discussion about how are people getting along in all the clubs. And it turns out, not even just in clubs, but in the world, a lot of times we don't get along because we have age differences. Some of the younger folks think that the older folks are old fogies, out of style, don't know how to learn anything. And some of the old folks think, oh, the younger generation is lazy and incompetent. All that is wrong. But what we're going to talk today is how we came to be the way we are. So let's go ahead and get started. Uh-oh, I'm hitting enter. Thank God. So we're going to talk about appreciating generational differences. Friends, although I'm going to also be including Toastmasters in this, this is a discussion for your life, for your job, for your neighbors, for anybody you encounter. Let's see how we can avoid having a generalization automatically as soon as we look at them because of their age. Let's talk about that. Can't we all just get along? Don't we find that it's always so easy to fall into the negatives as opposed to the positives? And this can blow up Toastmasters clubs. This can blow up people getting promotions in their jobs. This can blow up people even staying with their jobs if people don't understand the differences in the generations. Let's see what we can do to change that. Oh boy, I'm hitting enter. Iris, Naomi. Wait a minute, I'm hitting enter. Stand by, friends. I'm gonna come out of this. Why is this happening to me? I'm gonna do a stop share. I'm gonna stop share. I'm gonna go back into it.
Sometimes you have to press on the PowerPoint itself to activate your cursor again.
Oh, go back to the PowerPoint itself?
Yeah, and put your cursor on the PowerPoint and then press the advance. Try that, it might work.
Let me try that. Is that in the share screen, or go back to, holy moly, where's my presentation? Hey. Murphy's Law here. Okay, I'm going back into the presentation itself. I'm not sharing now, right? Okay. Now I'm in the document. I'm going to share it again. Go here.
Sharon, I have it up if you want to continue on.
Okay, let me just try one more time. And if this doesn't work, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and do that.
Okay.
So now I'm going to do this to extend it. Here we go. Okay. Here we go. Enter. Okay. So at the end of this presentation, here's what you're going to learn. When you leave today, you're going to know who the 5 generations are, how each generation's thinking was shaped, what was happening in the world, and also some suggestions to communicate with each generation. Now, keep in mind, this presentation is focused on people who were born and raised in the United States. Everything I'm talking to you about is strictly the United States. Now, and I'll say more about that. Everyone look at this chart. This is the generational differences. Now it's time for you to rename yourselves. Look for the year that you were born. When you rename yourself, if you are born between 95 and 07, in front of your name, put a Z. If you're born between 81 and 2000, you're a millennial, a generation Y, put a Y. If you're between 65 and 80, you're generation X, please put an X in front of your name when you rename. Baby boomers, 46 to 64, please put a BB in front of your name. If we have any traditionalists, go ahead and put a T in front of your name. And if you say to yourself, I don't want people non-traditionalists, go ahead and put a BB. We won't tell, all right? But we want everybody to be able to cycle down as to where we are. Again, this is for US population only. And friends, because people have such different biological and geographic differences, I'm going to be speaking in very broad terms. I want to repeat that, very broad terms. I may say something and all the millennials do this and you say, no, we don't. Keep in mind, this is broad terms based on a survey and study and research done by Mr. Cam Marston. I studied under Cam Marston, so everything I'm giving you are facts from the research done by Cam Marston. Look at this ad. Has anybody seen the macaroni and cheese commercial where the parent is talking, mother is talking to her daughter at the table in the kitchen and says, you can't leave until you eat everything on your plate. The little girl is between, I'd say 11, maybe between 10 and 12, and she says, fine, then we'll sleep here. I'm asking all of you now to put into chat, what would your parents say if you said that to them? And Iris, I'll ask you, because I can't see my chat, I'll ask you to read to me what pops up and what generation said what they said. Everybody put a comment into chat. What would your parents say if you say, fine, then we'll sleep here? Anything, Iris? Got you on mute. Got you on mute.
Okay.
Any comments at all?
Sure.
What are they saying?
Okay. You can be a young Miss Old. It can blow up people appropriately responding to a pandemic. I have issues with Zoom. Okay, let's see. Mom would beat me.
Thank you very much.
I will get a pop to the mouth. There will be no additional dialogue.
And what generation is saying that, Iris?
Generation X.
Okay.
The mom would beat me. That's Generation X. Baby boomers, let me get you a pillow. Baby boomers, my parents didn't make me eat it at all. Boomer. Traditional, glad to be 74 with understanding parents. Baby boomer, my parent would not have said anything. There would have been immediate action. Baby boomer, since I'm Asian, I would just get a dirty look. Baby boomer, I said it. My mom walked off. Xer, I guess an Xer, you should value your time and mine more than that. Baby boomer, you would not get a slap and you would not be able to leave the table. You would get a slap and you would not be able to leave the table. Generation X, I would have gotten away by hiding it or getting rid of it. X, good, you can sleep there until you eat. Generation X, my parents would say it is not punishable in public. Baby boomer, someone who is 74, was born in 1946, and so is a boomer. All right, that's all I have.
That's wonderful. Thank you. I saw the range of comments because I'll tell you personally, the person who said didn't get slapped, that would have been my mom. There is no way I could disrespect my mother by saying, fine, then we'll sleep here. I got slapped for rolling my eyes. I mean, there's a certain thing in the baby boomer generation, yes, I'm a baby boomer, in which you just don't talk to your parents like that. I was listening to hear what the Generation Y and the Generation X would have to say, especially Generation Y, because in a lot of cases, and we'll talk about this more when we get to Y, the parents are much more forgiving of their children when they show, my word, disrespect. So thank you so much for contributing. Now here's some more differences. One of the generations is Generation Z, those born after the year 2000. Well, it's a little bit early to discuss all the traits Generation Z is going to have because everything is so vastly different with Generation Z. But we'll talk more about it. And this has been called the digital native and the I generation. iPhone, iPad. That's where they get that I from. Each generation, you're going to see when I go through these demonstrations, has things that were happening in the United States that impacted their generation, that made them different, that made us different. What was going on in the world between our formative years, usually between 7 and 12, our formative years, what was happening that makes us think the way we do? Keep in mind, I'm talking broad generalizations. So 8 to 18 are your core years. This is when you were formed. This is when you were wired. Once again, a very general statement to think the way you do based on what was happening in the world. There's all other issues, you know, your parents and all that kind of stuff, your biological, but still, this is the core years for everybody between 8 and 18. Now, you know what? When someone comes in and I hit enter, now I'm not advancing. Interesting. Ah! Iris, I think I may have to stop. Pull it
and
up.
then don't worry about entering people. I'll do that. And
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. Now, I could go back into it and just stop letting people in. Maybe that's the difference.
Right, yeah. I got the people.
Okay, good. Let me go back to share. Sorry, folks. Share. And it takes me right to where I left off. Okay. Oh, wait a minute. Let me widen my screen here. Okay. Let's see if I can hit enter. Yes. Now here's another caveat. Those born 5 years on either side of the years I showed you on those charts, you can have the traits of both generations. So if you find yourself, well, yeah, I said baby boomers do that, but I tend to do this because I'm an X. I'm not going to hit admit just then. Just know that that can be part of the difference. Now, Iris, I see an admit, and I'm not going to touch it. Do you see it?
Yes.
Okay, I'm not going to touch it. I'm going to wait till it goes away. Can you admit?
Uh-huh. It's gone.
Oh, it's still on my screen. Oh, let me exit out. Let's see if that makes a difference. Stand by. I'm going to hit enter. Oh! Okay.
Look for the little arrow on the left corner of the PowerPoint. There's usually, if you kind of hover over it, there's an arrow that will go to the next slide.
But to see when I'm sharing, I don't see that.
Ah.
Yeah. How about making a am I a co-host? Maybe if I could be unhosted, that might help. What do you think? I'm going to stop sharing. And I'm going to come in again. Share. Okay, I'm sharing again. Oops. Okay. Now, everyone, let's start with your early memories. Think about between the ages of, say, 8 to 12. I want you to put in chat, what were your toys? What were your toys? And Iris, if you would just give me the first 5 or 10 as they come through, let's see what the toys were for. Let me start this way. Let me start with the traditionalist. If you're a traditionalist, only if you're a traditionalist, please enter into chat or raise your hand if Iris can see you and tell us what toys you had as a child. And Iris, if they come in, just let me know what they say, please.
Baby boomer, Barbie doll. Doll, traditionalist doll. Barbie doll. Look like Barbie is really popular there.
Okay, and that's the traditionalists had dolls. How about the baby boomers? Baby boomers, type into chat what toys you had. We heard dolls for the traditionalists.
Someone said baby boomer dolls, which I hated. Baby boomer tetherball.
Tetherball.
Yeah. Jacks, Prego sticks, baby boomer hula hoop.
Hula hoop.
Etch-a-sketch, yes.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. Yes. And you notice there's nothing here dealing with computers at all. Tetherball, jacks, sticks.
Monopoly.
Monopoly. All right. That's my language.
Jump and rope.
Jump and rope. I was a double Dutch champion, y'all. Double Dutch champion in my school. Yes. What else?
Pick up sticks.
Pick up sticks.
All right, let's hear from the Generation X's and everyone else.
Yes, X. X only. Go ahead and put in yours, X. What toys did you have? Generation X. What did you have?
Legos.
Legos.
Generation H, Cabbage Patch.
There we go. Now it begins. Cabbage Patch.
Star Wars. Mochichi. Pound Puppies. Teddy Ruxpin. Micro Machines. My Little Pony. Cards, books, bikes. Speak and spell.
All right. Thank you. We're noticing a change now. You're noticing how the toys are starting to change. What about our Generation Y? Go ahead and put in the millennials. What were your toys? We should notice a vast difference now.
There are no millennials?
We don't have any millennials?
Bike.
Bike? Well, let's move along then. Let's do another one. Think back to your days. What games did you play? What games did you play? Millennials, X's, Y's.
PlayStation.
Now, that's what I'm listening for. Yes, the computers are coming in now. Everybody go ahead and put it in. Iris, let me know what generation says what, please.
Okay. Cards. I think this is millennial. iPods.
There we go.
Traditional cards.
Yep. Cards.
Baby boomer, my daughter. Millennial loves Sims. You got a Generation X, Nintendo.
There we go. Yep.
X, tag, hide and seek, double dutch, chess and chess, checkers and chess, backgammon.
All right.
Scrabble, shift twister, operation. Yes, Sim, S-I-M-S. That's a millennial. I never heard of that. But hide and seek, cricket, soccer. Mother May I from Baby Boomers.
Mother May I. Oh my goodness.
Rock school. Oh,
rock school.
Pong, hopscotch, dodgeball from millennial. Generation X, Pong,
Pong. Yes.
Baby Boomers.
Yes.
Kickball, Baby Boomers.
Okay. Do you see that? I think there's some of the things that may have been mentioned there, the millennials may have never heard of, like rock school. Wonderful memory for me, but I'll bet they never heard of it. It was so simple back then. Finally, thank you, Iris. Let's continue with, what was your first car? What was your first car? New or used, what was your first car? Even if it was a hand-me-down. Iris, let me know what they say on
that. Generation X, a Pinto. Baby Boomer Toyota Corona. Baby Boomer Delta 88. Xer, a used Saab. Baby Boomer Toyota Tercel. Generation X, VW Bug.
Oh yeah.
Millennial Kia Sorento 2000, and Baby Boomer Ford Cortina.
All right. You'll notice as we move along, I've seen when I give this presentation. What was that, Iris? What was that?
Generation X, a 1971 Cadillac Coupe de Ville.
Ooh!
With the 8-track.
Had to be
Actually, it did have the 8-track. I had to switch it out to a modern. I had to take it to Radio Shack and get a new thing put in there. Yes, it did come with the 8-track.
71 Coupe de Ville. Oh my goodness. One thing, thank you all for participating. I want to say about that. One thing I noticed when I give this presentation around the country, a lot of the Generation Y, the millennials, a lot of them have as their first cars usually a foreign car. I didn't know why until I asked a lot. And to them, a foreign car just had more prestige than an American car. And I had a friend who bought his daughter way back in the day a Vega. I'm thinking the baby boomers and the traditionalists may know about Vegas, and she didn't like it. So he said that you don't get a car. Whereas today, a lot of the millennials get the car that mama or daddy usually buys for them. Traditionalists, baby boomers, I'm speaking very generally now, we usually had to, with our own hands, work to get that car. Now that 71 Cadillac, I get the feeling that may have been inherited, but I'm not really sure, LaShawn, that's supposed to buy it. Thank you. So let's move on. Now we're getting into the meat of the presentation. What was happening in the world that helped wire each generation? Now the traditionalists, born prior to 1946, the Great Depression. I would ask by a show of hands, but I can't see hands. Maybe Iris can get some chats in there. How many of you had parents or grandparents who went through the Depression and told you about it? Just think about that. If you would just, I'm trying to think, I'm just going to assume a lot of you did, because let's do it this way. Raise your hand or put in chat if your parent, if your grandparent or parent or great-grandparent told you what it was like living in the Depression. If you would put something in the chat so Iris can call on you, I'm going to ask you to tell us what you were told.
I see Lucy Youngs.
Okay. Lucy, tell us what you were told about the Depression.
Well, I like I said, I'm a child and grandchildren of the Depression, and I think it's common for the boomer generation, or at least it was made us more frugal, and just the idea, the importance of work, and how having a job, having a job and staying with a job was a very big value.
Yes.
And much more of an emphasis, not so much materialistic as, but everything was valued, and gifts were a big deal because you had the money to give it, you know, and you didn't waste food, you know, the Clean Plate Club, all of this, the sort of, you know, because the stories of when they didn't have it, and when, and you know, your place in society, being a grown-up meant getting a job, and work was extremely highly valued.
Yes, that's exactly what I was looking for, because when I hear my relatives talk about the Great Depression, that's exactly right. They saved everything because everything was in great need. Thank you so much.
When we cleaned out my parents' house up in the attic, we found the wrapping paper from their wedding anniversary.
Oh my.
55 years before. So they saved everything.
Everything. That's the key. They
neatly, but it was there.
Right, and they valued it because just to have it was important. Very well said. Very well said. And then along came Franklin Delano Roosevelt with the New Deal. Now everything started to change. Jobs became more prosperous, everybody started to get a job, everybody worked together. But then along came World War II. Now when World War II came along, suddenly we had a common enemy. We had Japan, we had Germany. Suddenly the whole country had common enemies. So the whole country was as one, fighting to win this war for America. Then after that came the Korean War, which was actually the Korean conflict, in which once again, the whole country was focused on winning, the whole country. We didn't think in terms of me, we thought in terms of we, for the whole country. Now, how did that affect the way they acted in the world? As mentioned, dedication and sacrifice. We've got to win this war for the sake of our country, the whole country. We've got to win the war. As mentioned, hard work. And in those days, I'm speaking generally now, daddy went to work, mama stayed home with the kids and the kitchen and the cooking, the old paradigm of the wife staying at home. But it was hard work. It was a different world back then. Conformity, my relatives would say that everybody wore the same kind of clothes because during the Depression, you didn't have the choice of what am I going to wear. Everybody wore the same kind of clothes. You were thinking about stability and security for your family and for the country. And here's a big one, which you're going to see is changed throughout the generations: respect for authority. If the boss said it, must be so. If the president said it, must be so. You didn't challenge, you didn't question. Traditionalists, this is how they got formed. Here's another one: delayed gratification. Father could work 40 years in the same job and get a gold watch. Yes, 40 years, a gold watch. There were no credit cards back then. If you wanted something, you had to wait for it. I hope you're hearing how the world is going to change from those days. Delayed gratification. Let's see, and everybody played their part for the greater good. We were all in this thing together for the sake of our country surviving. Now that's the attitude, and that's how they got wired, speaking generally, for all their thinking. Now, how does that translate? When you're working, talking, communicating with the traditionalists, but you'll see that they strictly adhere to the rules. In other words, if you're a free spirit, you're a Gen X or a Gen Y, you may find that they want to stick strictly to the rules. Understand, they're not being mean, they're not being silly. That's the way they're wired, because that's what was happening in the world. They want to strictly adhere to the rules. How do you talk to them? For Toastmasters, if they've been with Toastmasters for a while, share with them how much you respect their Toastmasters experience. No one wants to feel like they're ancient and sent out on an ice floe to die. Please show them some respect, because the world has changed. And if you want to keep them in your clubs and keep them focused and keep them giving speeches or whatever, just show some appreciation for them. Pathways, good luck with that, because pathways might scare some people. Is this the district that has a 99-year-old woman in it who's going through pathways? I can't remember, but someone told me there's a 99-year-old woman. Oh, is it?
Yes.
Tell us more about that, Naomi.
Helen Burkett.
Helen Burkett.
Mm-hmm.
How old is she? She's in her 90s, right?
99 this year.
She's in pathways.
Yep.
She is, and she has 13 DTMs as well.
Oh, 13 DTMs.
Yeah, she has every award that Toastmasters International offers.
Oh my gosh. So if someone comes to you and say, no, I'm too old, I can't get on with this, tell them about Helen Burkett. What an example. Thank you. Now let's move on to the baby boomers. And as I mentioned, I'm a baby boomer. Let's see how our lives could form, because the world started to change. Civil rights. Along came Rosa Parks. Along came Dr. Martin Luther King. And suddenly those old Jim Crow laws, all those segregation rules, the world's in turmoil now because civil rights is at the forefront. The sexual revolution. Oh my God, the pill? You mean people can do the nasty and not get pregnant? Oh my God, did that ever change the world? And traditionalists are what? Because now the world is really changing. We lived in fear. Can anybody tell me what duck and cover means?
Oh, I remember. We
Tell
used
us,
to have
Iris.
drills. We used to have drills in elementary school.
Yes.
Because of the bomb threats that were happening. So we would have to go and practice getting under our desk just in case it may occur, a war or a battle or something would occur. So but we would duck under our desk at school to practice in case there was a war or something would occur.
That's exactly right. That is exactly right. We lived in fear of the communists because they said if they drop an atomic bomb, Iris said it perfectly. Baby boomers were told to duck and cover, get under your desk. So if the atomic bomb hits, you'll be protected. If you're riding your bicycle on the street and you see a glow that the atomic bomb has just landed, jump off your bike and lean against the curb, duck and cover. Now in real life, you know you'd be incinerated in 2 seconds, but nonetheless, baby boomers were taught duck and cover. That's the world we lived in with fear. The Cuban Missile Crisis. Russia was sending missiles over to Cuba. We were afraid that if those missiles got into Cuba, they'd be 90 miles off the coast of the United States, which means we could all be annihilated. Fear. We started off our formative years living in fear because of what was happening in the world. President Kennedy said he'd like to see us go to the moon. In 1969, we left the bounds of Earth and got to the moon, July 20th, 1969. The world is changing. Traditionalists could never imagine us landing on the moon. To baby boomers, it happened. But here's the sad thing that happened that hit the baby boomers. Who could tell me about assassinations in the 60s? Who got killed?
President Kennedy.
JFK. Yeah.
Yes.
RFK,
Martin Luther
MLK.
King. Martin Luther King.
Martin Luther King, JFK.
Edgar Meggers.
Edgar Medgar. Yes, yes.
I think I mispronounced that.
That's close enough. Medgar Evers. Yes, indeed.
Medgar Evers. That's
Medgar Evers. Everyone who was leading the charge to change
Malcolm
the world.
X.
Malcolm X in the Audubon Room in New York. We were seeing assassinations. I mean, yes, throughout history, there have been assassinations, but in the United States, people who we revered, people who were admired, people who were changing the world, were getting shot. So now we're already living in fear. Now we're wondering, are we gonna, what else can happen? This was traumatic. To baby boomers, living in fear was a reality. Then along came the Vietnam conflict, and many baby boomers had friends who went off to this needless war and saw them die. So suddenly the world is different than World War II, because in World War II, we had a purpose. We had to beat Hitler, we had to beat Tojo in Japan. But now Vietnam, it was, who are we? How do we know when we've won? And our friends are dying. So this is how baby boomers got wired, living in fear and knowing that the world is not necessarily a safe place. How did that affect how we act? Oh, this is one of my meetings. Somebody said, don't forget to add interstate highways. Dwight D. Eisenhower said, we need to have highways to get across America better, because when he was in Germany for World War II, he saw how the Autobahn in Germany let traffic go real fast. And he thought, if we had trouble in the United States, how could the army get from one side of the country to the other? So he had interstate highways. And now we baby boomers had freedom. We had cars that could take us from New York to California in less than 3 or 4 days. It was amazing as opposed to months. Things are different. We're getting that freedom. According to Cam's surveys, he's found that as a group, baby boomers have been the wealthiest, most active, and most physically fit generation. There was even a book called The Greatest Generation, because baby boomers were now much more independent because we lived in fear, didn't know if we're going to be alive tomorrow. So let's go for it. The downside is now, whereas the traditionalists may have worked 40 years to get that gold watch, for baby boomers, suddenly it became career. You're going to get into a job, you're going to make a lot of money, you're going to have a bigger house, you're going to have a finer car, you're going to have all the material things that your traditionalist parents had to wait years for or didn't even think about. So now the world is changing as far as our thinking. We're focused on our career. And baby boomers are really big on, I'm going to be vice president, I'm going to be president, I'm going to be promoted. Career, not job, career. Remember that. General statement, live to work. We live to work. Now, unlike our traditionalist parents, we want personal gratification. I work hard, I want it, and I want it now. Personal gratification was bigger than gratification for the whole country. It was personal gratification. We were not told, this is the general statement, we were not told by our parents that they loved us. My parents didn't say they loved me until I got good and grown. They were too busy working and trying to put food on the table to get into affection. I want you to think about this. When traditionalists brought their babies home, what was the rule for taking a baby home? I remember my mother would say, she sat in the front seat of the car with the baby on her lap, no seat belts. Daddy was smoking, but that's okay. When we get to Generation X, let's look at the difference in the way babies are brought home. But keep in mind, not a lot of affection from traditionalist parents to baby boomers. So that's how we got wired. Now, if you want to connect to a baby boomer, place an emphasis on teamwork, Toastmaster swag. Baby boomers love swag. Love. Baby boomers have all their plaques on the wall. They even said in Cam's research, baby boomers take all the free stuff out of hotels. We love stuff. We love to pump ourselves up to show what we've accomplished, by golly. And we love our meaningful titles. DTM. But you had to work for that, but we love our titles. And when you talk to Toastmasters, talk about more than you do about their home lives. They don't like to talk so much about personal, just talk about what I've accomplished in my life. And with pathways, be a little more gentle. But now that we got Helen at 99 years old, District 27 can also say, listen, get into pathways, people. There's no need to delay this. But you still got to nudge them in, because baby boomers and traditionalists, we love our CC manuals and we love our advanced manuals. But gently, gently, gently move us over. All right. So now let's go to Generation X. So now we've seen the traditionalists, daddy worked for 40 years and got a gold watch. We've seen the baby boomers were focusing on career. Let's look at Generation X. What was happening in the world? Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall. Suddenly we're seeing things change in Europe. The communist scare is diminished. Watergate. Generation X saw the president lied? What? And for the first time, we saw a president not killed, but taken out of office because of all the investigation that shows how evil, how bad he was. Just think, in the history of the United States, this was the first president to actually come through like this, other than, Johnson back in Lincoln's day. Here comes women's liberation, the ERA. Suddenly, women can join the army. Women can do more than their predecessor women, the baby boomer women, traditionalist women. Women are becoming more free. Women can get jobs. Still not perfect, but women are in the home front. We're getting wired. Desert Storm. You mean a war only lasts for 2 weeks? I think that's about how long Desert Storm lasted, as opposed to World War II that was 4 years. Now, no big deal. We're at war. You go, you win, you come back. We're wired differently when it comes to war. Energy crisis. Do any Generation X on this call recall long gas lines? Because they told we were running out of fuel. We were running out of gas. And suddenly everybody was around the corner. People getting killed for butting in line. This, the gas lines. This had never happened before. So now we're wired to, oh my goodness, we're gonna run out of gasoline. What are we gonna do? Our previous generations couldn't relate to that, but this is what was happening. Oh my God, 1980, AIDS. AIDS hit the workforce, hit the world. Now we have to remember that I said that women's liberation and the sex thing I said before, screeching halt, screeching halt. What's this all about? The world is changing. How do we react? Gen X is known for having fierce independence. Just because their parents were so focused on the career, they didn't pay a lot of attention. Keep in mind, I'm speaking generally now. Their parents may not have paid as much attention to their children. So that meant the children had to go on their own to get things started. Fierce independence. And now remember how I said before, work was a career? Work is just a job, because Gen X now is focusing on their own lives, the importance of their own lives. They didn't get a lot of affection from their parents. Well, they got some affection, but work is just a job. Work-life balance has entered into the world now with Generation X. More involved with child rearing. Remember I told you baby boomers, our parents didn't tell us I loved them, that they loved us. That meant that the baby boomers are telling their kids, and the baby boomers were more involved with child rearing than the baby boomers. So the Generation X takes more care of their children than the baby boomers took care of their children, because now they have the work-life balance. And now computers are in the world. So now they're becoming more techno-literate. Very skeptical. If the president lied, what else is going on in the world? So Generation X, on my Generation X friends, now you're becoming more independent and more focused on work-life balance and your own happiness and your family's happiness. It's not all about money so much. So how does that react? Oh, Cam says that his survey showed that 75%, that's a very high number, of Gen X parents got divorced. I didn't believe that until I was good and grown, and my mother told me that she and my dad got divorced. They got married again after they got divorced, but they got divorced. That's because her mother was such a nag. But nonetheless, 75% got divorced. Generation X, the good news is, studies show you're highly educated, active, balanced, and you focus on have a happy and you're family oriented, more so than the predecessors. Traditional, work hard, wait for that watch in 40 years, mom stays home. Baby boomers, focus on career, 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 career. Latchkey kids. I was a latchkey kid. Who knows what a latchkey kid is? Naomi, what's a latchkey kid?
You had the keys to the house and you took the bus, train, walked to school, and you came home. So literally, I think it's, you had the key around your neck and you let yourself back into your house.
That's exactly right. I was a latchkey kid, even though I was a baby boomer, but yes, latchkey kids, another part of the world, because the parents are so involved with other things. Thank you, Naomi. And also Generation X, you trust your peers more than you do the older generations. When the VCR came out, you talked to your friends about how do I get this thing started. You didn't trust anybody older to know because they didn't know. It was a whole new world, this whole new world of computers and electronics. Cam also said that you Generation X are more heterogeneous generation. You aren't hung up as much on race, on sexual orientation, on anything that's just different, religion. You're more open. It's like a Star Trek kind of world. Generation X, you're more open to others, generally speaking. So how do we communicate now with Generation X? Communicate directly. Don't soft pedal. We like to be told, tell me now, tell me now. If something happens, tell me now. If it's bothering you, tell me now. Don't wait till later to tell me. Let's clear the air, talk to me now. Also, you're more free to talk about your personal lives. Remember how I said the previous ones were more focused on their career, they could care less about your personal lives. Generation X, you don't mind talking to people about your personal life and listening. And generally, you're more open to pathways than the older generations. Everybody, I'm speaking very generally now, but we find Gen X will jump onto it faster than a baby boomer or a traditionalist. Finally, let's look at the millennials. Oh my goodness, has the world changed. Child-focused world. Remember when I said how baby boomers came home, front seat of the car, sitting on mama's lap, daddy smoking? Who can tell me the federal rules now for a baby coming home from the hospital?
Gosh, they have to, the children have to do a stress, a seat, what do you call it, a car seat stress test before they come home.
Yes.
Then they have to be strapped into the car in a particular way.
Yes. Yes, that's exactly right. And who carries the baby out of the hospital? Does the mother carry the baby out of the hospital?
I'm not sure who takes the baby out of the hospital. They probably have to be escorted by the practitioner, the medical practitioner, or whoever it is, nurse or whoever.
Yes.
And then make sure that they're properly strapped in and things like that.
Yes, a federally mandated car seat. And that car seat is like being in the womb. It doesn't have to be backwards in the back seat. I mean, it has to be very special compared to being in the front seat with mama on her lap with daddy smoking a cigarette. Things are different. Babies now are being coddled. And now we're back to my example of the macaroni and cheese. A lot of mamas tell me who have millennial children, they'll tell their children, what would you like to have for breakfast? And if they have 3 kids and one wants oatmeal, the other wants cereal, the other wants something else, she'll get all 3. Compared to baby boomers, you got what was put on that table. And macaroni and cheese, I like whoever said, I'm gonna sit here until I eat that food because mama's not gonna have it. Millennials, you have been born and been wired in a child-focused world. Let's see some more about that. What scares you? For the first time in history, school shootings. Who would think we'd have to have metal detectors going into schools because people are going in and killing children? This didn't happen with traditionalists, didn't happen with baby boomers, didn't happen with Gen X, but now it's happening with Gen Y. So now you're having different fears compared with the generations ahead of you had. School shootings. 1995, Oklahoma City. On the United States soil, major bombing, major deaths in our country. So now you're seeing fears that are different than the fears we had from communism. You're seeing fears right here at home, Oklahoma City. Technology is now coming into play. Computers, when I ask each generation, how old were you when you first put your hands on a computer? Based on the generation, I might hear I was 29, I was 18, I was 30. Millennials tell me 18 months. 18 months, because the computers are pervasive, everybody has them. So now you're getting smarter earlier on computers with technology. 9/11, if fear wasn't bad enough, now you saw the Twin Towers on our soil get destroyed. My point is you have fear of a different kind. You're being wired because of these incidents happening, 9/11, which hit us all. So what does that mean? Millennials, you are extremely confident. Have you noticed commercials in which, hi, I'm Dave and I'm Harry, and now we sell razors? Those kids look like they're 20 years old and they're starting their own company because you're not afraid of stepping forward. You've been coddled, my word, coddled, to know you can do anything. Very confident, much more confident than our previous generations. Now you're focused on the job, but not the organization, because you don't really care. You want to make your money and go back and do what you want to do. That's not a negative statement. It's just how you're wired now, because life can be temporary with all these terrorist things happening on our own soil. I put an illustration there of a person who is techno-fused. You are so smart. Technically, you learn so much faster than the previous generations. Unfortunately, a lot of the old school teachers want to give you, what's it, Ritalin, because they think you're too hyper. Your brains are going so much faster because you've got generations inside your head that you're carrying forth with. You're very, very technically smart. Also, Generation Y, you're able to multitask so much better than the previous generations. Have you noticed how the commercials on television, every second something's changing? That's because millennials need that pop, 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 pop. You can't stand to sit and see the same image for more than, say, 20 or 30 seconds. Commercials are catering to you to sell their products because you're that smart and you need to move, move, move. Now, here's one thing that a lot of us other generations are having problems with. We're taught, thanks to Dr. Spock, no one wants to be a loser. Therefore, if you participate, everybody gets a trophy. We're number 11. We're number 11. And everybody has a we're number 11 trophy because we don't want you to feel bad. Some schools have even stopped giving pass-fail grades because they don't want you to feel bad. This may sound negative, but this is how a lot of millennials are wired now. When I was speaking at GlaxoSmithKline, they pulled me over and told me that they have a special room for the parents when the child comes to interview for a job after college. I said, what do you mean a special room? The parents go with the children for job interviews. The parents are answering all the questions. The millennial just sits there because the parent takes control because this is their baby, their child. It's getting out of hand, friends, but nonetheless, that's what's happening in the world because the child is so pampered, I'm speaking generally, so pampered that it's kind of hard to really exist in the world outside the home. But when they do find a job that they love, you have trouble disengaging from work. Maybe you've seen some, I guess they call them geeks and nerds who can sit at a computer for 12, 14 hours and not be distracted because they're enjoying what they're doing. They might have trouble disengaging from work. Millennials are also called the boomerang generation. Do any of you know kids who come back home because they either graduated college or left home for one reason or another, but they come back home? The boomerang generation. I have a friend named Harry at IBM. Harry had 4 kids. Those 4 kids left, got married, had kids. All 4 kids came back home. Harry wanted to play golf for the rest of his life, but now he had to keep working to take care of the boomerang generation. They've been so coddled that they don't know how to act outside of the home. Now, for those of you in the call, you may say, that's not me, and that's fine. Just know that a lot of millennials are this way. And also they place people before profits. And I think that's a good thing, except in the US economy, everybody wants to know how much money did you make? They're more people oriented.
Sharon, I have a comment that.
Oh, thank you.
I had one for 20 months after she graduated from college.
20 months?
20 months.
That's how long she lasted? Oh my God. I rest my case. And by the way, thank you, Iris. Friends, if you have comments while I'm talking, please do what I just said. Send a note to Iris so Iris can share that comment. That's very valuable to us, okay? Interrupt with 1 interruption. Thank you very much, Iris, and thank you for that comment. 20 months. That proves the point right there. And from a business standpoint, once again, they believe believe that success should be measured more than profit. How successful are you more than profit? And 80% prefer on-the-spot recognition over formal reviews. That means if something happens, tell them now, tell them now, tell them now. Don't wait. 50% want to start their own business, and many have already done so. That's because you're being so smart. Not necessarily business savvy, but you pick up what's needed to be done. And you don't know that there's certain rules and a certain structure when starting a business. You just start the business and keep on going. And 2 years, a little more than 20 months, is the average employment tenure. They consider loyalty is giving you 2 weeks notice. I'm out of here. And the average, whereas the traditionalists may stay on the job for 40 years, Generation Y might have 12 to 20 jobs in their lifetime. 12 to 20 jobs is what the studies show, because life is so fast. I want to also add that I've spoken to some millennials when I give them this presentation, and a lot of them just don't feel they're going to live to be 30. because of all the dangers around them. I even had my cousin's son got killed by a drive-by shooting in Chicago. But 15-year-old girls were telling me that they were planning their funerals. They want what music's going to be played, what do they want to wear, because they just don't think they're going to live to be 30 years old because the world is just in so much trouble in their minds and being hit with so many negative information. But from a positive standpoint, you want to talk to a millennial, communicate electronically. You can be in the same room with the millennial and everybody's doing this. Everybody's doing this because that's the way they're wired, to use communication to talk. Provide feedback continually, especially in Toastmasters. Great, you got that path done. Let them know good. Loosen up on the Toastmasters etiquette. Now, this is something that I just learned personally in the last 3 years. I've been involved in starting 2 new clubs, in which they're corporate clubs, in which the whole company was millennials. My right hand to the truth on this. The clubs didn't last 6 months. Why? Because they thought that we were a cult in terms of Madam Toastmaster, Mr. General Evaluator. The etiquette that we used, they thought was silly and useless. The clubs dissolved. My information I would say on that, if you form a Toastmasters club and they want to have their own culture, if they don't want to say Madam Toastmaster, if it means keeping the club, they don't have to say Madam Toastmaster. Let them get started in their pathways, and it may sound crazy, but that's better than having the club fold. Personally, 2 clubs I've seen folded. One lasted 3 months because they thought Toastmasters etiquette was silly. They're independent. Millennials want to do things their way. I learned the hard way on that one, and they're very comfortable with pathways. I'm winding in now to the Generation Z, which I already told you we don't have a lot of information about, but it's mostly what you saw with the Ys. Everything is online, a lot of messaging, fashion. I can talk in emojis, symbols, videos, pictures. Very entrepreneurial spirit, just like the Ys.
Sharon, I got a little note here.
Yes.
From Baby Boom. My granddaughter called me to watch Miss America with her so we could then text for 3 hours.
That's what I'm talking about. Thank you, Basil. Text. Is it bad? Who's to say? But that's the preferred way to communicate. Thank you, Basil. And keep those comments coming to Iris because we need to share this information. So if you want to connect with Generation Z, shorter bursts. Even this meeting might be too long for Generation Z. You just keep it short, keep it fast, go. Their minds are constantly moving. All right, and treat them as adults, even though you may think, what, 3 hours? But don't disrespect them and collaborate with them and help them collaborate with others. So overall, this is my last chart, and I'm open to any comments after this. Each generation brings brand new outlooks, new information, levels of information, as you can see. Things that were happening in the world is how we are wired. So don't diss a person just because they're older. Don't diss a person just because they're younger. I hope you've seen how we are all wired based on what's happening in the world that let us become the way we are. Now with that, thank you for attending. And I'm going to ask Iris, if anybody sends any comments over, I can see the chat room now. I see Generation Z, 2 generation, like your phone. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'd like to ask some of you now, if you would just throw into chat, what is, am I okay on time there, Iris? I think I am.
Yes, you have plenty.
Folks, you can either come off of your video, turn on your video, or send me a comment as to what is the main takeaway that you got from this session that we've just completed. Don't be bashful.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, Jenny. Hi, Jenny.
Hi. Confused about people born between 1995 and 2000 because millennials are 81 to 2000, Gen Z 1995 to 2007. So yes. Do those people belong to 2 generations?
The 2 generations, because a lot of the stuff that Z has is the exact same traits as the Y, but because that's a good point, Jenny. So now they're pulling together the information, they being Cam and his experts. What is the differentiation between these 2 generations? Is there a differentiation? Because right now it's kind of looking the same with that crossover in years. So stand by, that's probably going to change. Okay, thank you. Another comment or question? Oh, okay.
I know y'all want to hear something, have something, right? This is how we have to connect and work with each other. I know there's some questions out there.
Kim, you're on. Go ahead, Kim.
I want to hear a little bit more about Toastmaster International's response to the millenniums not being interested because of the protocol, addressing Madam Toastmaster of the day, fellow Toastmasters, that kind of thing.
Yes.
I thought you said it's okay. They don't have to. We don't have to press that on them.
Good question. This is one of my personal statements, Kim. Toastmasters International has not come out with any stance on that. That's really a Sharon Hill statement, because to me, if it means keeping the club, I will keep the club. Now, we can't let them go every speech is a non-manual speech or a non-pathway speech, and we have to have that. But it was the specific language that they didn't like, those two clubs. And by the way, those clubs weren't even related to each other. One was in downtown Raleigh, the other one was in Cary, which is miles apart, but they were all millennials. And as a matter of fact, the club mentors almost lost their minds because the people wanted to do things differently. It got to a point where they had to fold. For example, the club mentor called me and said, the table topics master asked the question from his seat. And when he called on the name first to answer the question, everybody stayed in their seat. I said, well, how did they see the timer? They didn't see the timer. I said, well, how can they do tabletop if they can't see the timer? I think that's an extreme. And she was, by the way, she was a weak mentor. I think I would have made them look at the timing for their speeches, but Madam Toastmaster, Mr. Table Topics Master, that's the language. Because I told him you're supposed to end every speech, don't say thank you, say the name of the role that's replacing you. That's what bothered them. So I didn't carry this up to Toastmasters International, but in our district, we decided, let them do what makes sense as long as they're still maybe focusing on the DCP, because they may or may not be focusing on DCP, but it was the language that they didn't like. So Toastmasters is letting more international, more virtual clubs come in, which the Generation X and Y just love, more virtual clubs. They are listening to that more so than the etiquette.
Great. Sharon, we have another great question here.
Yes.
How do you handle a multi-generational club whose preferences prevail?
Well, I guess it depends on the leadership team. Thank you for asking that question. That was Lucy.
Lucy.
Yes, thank you. The leadership team, I would hope, would have every generation or at least more than one generation in it. Let's say, for example, the whole leadership team is baby boomers and a lot of the club is Generation X or Y. Might have a problem there if we don't get feedback, if we don't get information as to, team, what would you like? What would make you happy? So you've got to talk to each other. You've got to talk to each other. And then I've explained how to talk to each other, respect each other, but get some of their ideas. And don't put them down if they think the idea doesn't match. If you think the idea doesn't match your standards, doesn't meet my standards, we've got to be more open to what brings success to the club. So there are multi-generationals. We've got, I think every club, I think most of your clubs probably have multi-generational. Would that be a correct statement? Most of your clubs have multi-generational. If the person is brand new, of course, they got to go through, the learning period, but please make sure you get a mentor for them and make sure the mentor understands what we've discussed today. Don't go in demanding that you do this, demanding you do that. Understand their generation and how to talk to them so they can accept what you're saying for multi-generational. What else?
Go ahead.
There's another question. Have you read William Strauss and Niels Howell's book, Generations?
No, I have not. I've heard of it. I deal with my buddy Cam, but is it pretty much what I'm saying, or is there any differences?
There are some differences.
Okay.
But it's fascinating.
Okay. It's a whole study. And plus, keeping in mind, my training has been over the years. I'm sure new information has come out. I haven't seen Cam in a year to hear what's changed. Let me ask this question. Is there anything I said today that one of you personally said, no way, I am not like that at all for my generation? Is there anybody like that? I don't see any hands going up. I don't see anything going into the chat. This is good. That's encouraging. That's it. That's the main thing to know.
Sharon, the only thing for me was a technology track. So I felt like even though I'm a Generation X, I still had I was the one that put Speak and Spell. It is an electronic device.
Uh-huh.
And so I had that from when I was tiny, you know.
See, that's the whole point. Thank you, Naomi.
So and also I still have an appreciation for the
oh yes. Everyone, look at what Naomi's holding up. Who knows what that is?
Oh, yes.
A dial-up phone.
Rotary phone. Look at what Jennifer put up there. Oh my God.
I have appreciation for the antiques.
Yes, for the antiques. Oh my goodness. I'm gonna end with another story. Thank you for showing that, Naomi. That reminded me. Everybody, look at Naomi's frame on her picture, on her video. Can anybody tell us? Somebody said it earlier. What is that?
TV.
The TV.
Television. It's a tube TV.
One without a remote.
A tube TV. And I'll end by saying,
it's what my parents said why they had kids, right? To go change the channel.
That's just what I was about to say. Part of my responsibility was to change the channel because we didn't have remotes, and also to hold the tube in place. Because if the tube got too hot, the television would go off. So I would stand there when my father watched the Three Stooges holding the television tube in place. My friends, I see the red now that I want to stay within your time and honor you. Thank you so very much for interacting. I hope you enjoyed it. And I will turn control of the meeting back over to Madam District Director Iris Taylor.
Yes, and I'm going to turn it to Naomi.
Take it away, Naomi.
Fellow Toastmasters, and especially Sharon, thank you so much for all the enlightenment and information you've put out today. Rouse Medley said, we learn the most in times of enjoyment.
Yes.
And I think we had that today.
Thank you.
So thank you very much, Sharon.